Welcome to part 3 of this tutorial series. We will be continuing with the procedural textures. On the last episode, we saw where the values come from. We saw the coordinates. In this one, we will focus on what can we do with those values, how to mix them, how they behave. Let's get started. If you remember from the first episode, these are the views to see a bit the values that we are working here. This is the classic view of a plane with the values that correspond to this part of the coordinate. Here we have those values projected. If they are positive, they go up, negative go down, and here is the 1. So in this case we have a value of around 0.4 in this peak, for example. This is showing a bit the limit between 0 and or negative and positive values, or 0 and positive values, depends on what we are doing. This is the actual shape of a noise texture. That's what we have here. The difference is that we are changing the scale. Instead of going from something close to 0.2 to 0.8, goes to minus 0.5 to 0.5. And you can see as we scale or change the detail, what happens to the real shape of the texture. And the last map here shows in cyan the 0, and red values are negative and green values are positive. Okay, so one of the first thing you have to understand when we start mixing values and making procedural textures is that I saw a lot of people asking, how can we know the number, the value that comes out of the nodes? And they expect like a number like 10 or something like that. But as you maybe started to understand on the last episode, we don't have one value, we have a map of values in 3 dimensions. So the output is not a value, it's a map of values. Mainly we make 2 things with these maps. There are more things, but mainly 2. One is masks. We use them to mix 2 values. And the other thing is height maps. We use them to create bumps or displacement. There is also vector displacement, but I already have an introduction to vector displacement tutorial, and I think it's something for a separate tutorial. So we are not going to go into that at the moment. To create those values, we can use the coordinates, as we already saw, and also alter or create our own coordinates to achieve what we want. I will try to show a bit what I mean with the maps and the values, and start a bit mixing different information, different values to make it more clear. For example, if we use a mix RGB node, we have a color that it's also a value, 2 different colors or values, and a factor here that goes from 0 to 1. Okay, we are going to use mix for now. There's a lot of way to mix or blend modes. but we are going to start with this one. For example, if we add a value node with a value of, say, 0 here, shift duplicate, and the value of 1 here, I will plug this on the bottom and this one here. And in this case, if I plug this to the visualizer, you will see that we are using the factor 1, so we are taking the 100% of this value and nothing from this one. So we get a complete one value in everything. That's what you see here. This is the 1. And as we move this towards the 0, we will be taking less and less from the second value and more from the first value. So in this case, we have 1 and 0, and we will start going to 0, as you can see there. In colors, you see black representing the 0 or negative values, and as we get to 1, you see white representing the 1. This is when we use constant values in all the map that we're using to control this factor. Okay, let's try now with -1 here. So with a factor of 1, we are taking 100% of this value. We are still at 1. But for example, if we now go to 0.5 here, we will get half of this value, or 50% of the value, and 50% of this value that is -1. So now we are at 0. And if we keep going, we will reach -1 in this moment. Now, what happens if we don't use constant value like this? For example, we can use a noise texture. In this case, first we are going to see how this looks. And now I will use this as my factor. So it's no longer a plain and a number, constant number, but a map of numbers that have different values in different regions. So if we plug this here, plug this to the visualizer, you will see let me make this 1 and 0, sorry. Where the values were 1, we have 100% of these values, so the values are still 1, and the regions that are at 0 are taking the -1, and everything in between is taking percentage of this, depending on the value of that factor. It's important also to understand that the factor cannot go below 0 or above 1, even if we plug something. For example, I will use first a value that it's easier to understand, with maybe 5 here. So this doesn't mean that it will take 5 times this number. It's when it reaches 1, it stays as 1. If we use here in our map range number 5, for example, this scale will become a 0 to 5 scale, and everything that is above 1 will become 1. So we will see like a clump there, as you can see. Only the values that were between 0 and 1 will be seen here, and everything above 1 will be clumped there. So this is in general how we create masks. The masks are useful. I will, for example, now we have an idea of how to mix different values and an idea of where they come from. Okay, so first we have a texture coordinate. we will, for example, create a pattern, a basic pattern. This is a simple mask because we have a 100%, we can say, on this side and 0 on the other side. So when we mix those with a mix RGB, we use this as a factor, and we know that what was white will take this value, and what was black will take this value. So for example, we can create different colors for those. For example, in this case, I will use red here and blue on the part that is black. We connect this to the principal BSDF, and we plug this, and we have the different colors. We can keep using the same mask. In this case, for example, here. And we can use this now, for example, for the roughness. And we can say the blue has a very low roughness. And here we can control the roughness of the red part. As you can see now. Then we can, for example, use the same for a metallic. And we will say that the blue part is it's metallic and the red part is not. And we can also use this for different bump maps of the different regions. For example, we can create a basic noise texture here, and we will multiply this by the same mask. What we are going to do with this is now our texture, and we want to have it only on the red part, for example. So we multiply it like this, and now we only have a value on the right side. We can use this with another multiply to alter the value now. If we multiply this by a low number to make something that we can use in the bump map, I like to make this not in the distance here, but with a multiply to have them separated if I want to add something else for the other region. I can change the height separately. So we use this here, and we plug this on the normal, and now we have bump on the right side. Of course, this is a map that is 1 here and 0 here, but you can also use like a gradient instead, or different maps. Let's, for example, use the generated and make something progressive. I will use this instead for the mask, and also for the bump. Now we will have something that changes gradually. Okay, so we have now a gradient change from blue to red. You can see the same thing on the roughness and in the metallic also. When you are creating materials, you have to think, at least This is how I like to do it, or I find it easier. You have to think when they are a bit more complex that you will have, for example, let's say metal, paint, and dirt or dust on top. You have to think in layers. So you will have, in this case, for example, let's do a practical example. The last layer of the material will be the dirt or the dust. So we will use that here. We will have another layer for the paint. And in this case, we don't need another mix because we will mix them, the paint and the metal color that is underneath in here. But you can keep adding layers. Let's start with, for example, noise. Okay, so we have a scale now that goes from the minimum value to the maximum value there. What I want to do is to tell this that take the values that are from 0 to 5, and now those values go from 0 to 1. So everything that is above 0.5 on my original map will become 1. And now I will use greater than, and we will make it like this, for example, and we will use this to mix the color of the paint and metal here. So the white will become paint and the black will become white. That's the color of the metal that we are going to use. Now we make the same for the, in this case, let's change the order to make it more according to the principal shader. This will be our metallic now. We plug the same mask to make the paint non-metallic and the metal metallic, and again the same for the roughness. That's metal will be quite like this, and the roughness of the paint will do it like that. Okay. Now we will create another mask for the dust. That will be, maybe I will use, another nice texture. Or the dirt or whatever. And we will use, I will use a map range to change it a bit. And we'll use this on this factor. The white will become the dust, and we will use the other. So we plug this on the first value. Depends on what you're doing here, the mask that you have. And the same here, and the same here. And we will use the mask again and again. Now this is the color of the dust. And in this case of the metallic, dust non-metallic, and this is for the roughness, also for the roughness. And now we can adjust values. We are missing also the bump and stuff to make it look good. In this case, for example, if you want the dust to be less visible, you can adjust the strength of the mask. Okay, that's it. The next episode we will be learning about height maps and bump. If you find this useful and you want to help to keep this channel going, you can like the video. Also check my Gumroad and my Patreon account. And if you have any questions, you can leave them in the comments below. Thanks for watching and see you in the next video.